Hey guys, Cameron for Legend Tomorrow, Season 1, Episode 8, Night of the Hawk, and I was really looking forward to this episode, because they've really been good lately, I have to say. I mean, last week's episode was definitely a step in the right direction, and especially that intense confrontation with Len and Mick, I really didn't know was going to happen this episode, and I have to say, this was by far the most entertaining episode of the season. I don't know if it was the best, but I do think it was the most entertaining. I was into it. There were some really good issues in this episode. There were great character moments. It was funny. They used the time period really well. Just everything about this episode. No, this probably was the best episode of the season for me because it did everything right for the show. Everything I wanted the show to do, this episode did, and I think they just did it so well. It wasn't too dramatic. It wasn't too funny. They really just combined everything that works about the show in this episode, and I definitely really like that. But let's just get into it because I really love this episode, and yeah, so first of all, we start off in 1958, which is completely different than any time period we've seen, and I have to say that this by far is the most utilized time period that this show has done. Forget what I said about the 70s. They used the 70s very well, but they used the 50s even better. I mean, this felt like the show usually is in the 50s. They did it so well in this episode. We see two pairs of teenagers prepare to drag race. Tommy Fuller and his girlfriend Betty Seaver and David and Billy. They take off and the tire of Billy's car blows out. Now I will say this was a bit predictable. I knew something bad was going to happen here. The car crashes. Betty's knocked unconscious. Tommy sees a glowing blue rock nearby. Figures that it's a comet. Savage steps out and says that he was drawn to it as well. He admits the teenager's presence was unexpected, but figures that it was destiny. And really crazy way to start the episode. I mean, the way that Savage is manipulating them like this, it's really crazy to watch. So the Waverider lands in 1958. No surprise, because 2 episodes ago, that's where they said they were going. And Rip warns that the effects of time travel increase with the length of the jaunt, and they wonder why Savage is in the small town, because why, of all places, would he go to Oregon? That doesn't really make sense. Especially since, Savage wants to be this world leader, why would he just randomly go here? So Rip finds a newspaper article about a serial killer, and he figures that Savage is responsible for that. But they figure that it's small time for Savage, and Kendra wonders how Rip plans to find him, and Rip says that there must be a common link between the victims. There has to be something that Savage is doing to all of them, and then they'll know, alright, this is who Savage is killing, and this is where he is. So I thought this was really well done the way they started. So Ray and Kendra go to the home of the piano teacher that was first clear. Now let's talk about Ray and Kendra, because I talked about how I don't want these two together, and then I felt it was very unnecessary. They work so well in this episode. I mean, I really think this was the episode that showed that Ray and Kendra actually have very good chemistry. And especially when they had fun with them like they did in this episode. They didn't take it too seriously. They really had fun with it, and I enjoyed that. And that's really what worked for me. Everything about this was a lot of fun. And the realtor shows Kendra and Ray the home. They pose as husband and wife. And the realtor's shocked to learn that they're married because, of course, Kendra is half black. And back then, of course, that wasn't really accepted. Interracial marriage, that wasn't really something that was accepted, and I think they really handled this subject of racism really well in this episode. They could have done it really cliche, but they handled it really well, and so she suggests she has a home in another more accepting town for them, and Kendra assures her that they're fine with Harmony Falls, and that this is where they want to be. They don't want to be anywhere else, and you can tell that this is something that Kendra obviously, isn't used to, because, her world's not like this, but they have to pretend like they are used to this, and that's just how the world is, and it's very interesting to watch, I have to say. So, the second victim, Dr. Matt Miller, was killed at the town's asylum, and Stein applies for Miller's job with Sarah as his nurse assistant, and the head doctor, Hannah, assures Stein that she looks like she'll fit right in, and basically Sarah's going to be the nurse to find evidence. So, basically, I thought this was well done the way they handled this. And also, something I liked is, like they said in last week's episode, no one's staying on the Waverider anymore. They're all kind of doing their own thing to contribute to this mission, and I think they showed that very well here. So, Rip has Jax looking at the disappearance of 3 teenagers a week before the murder began, and as for Len, he and Rip go to the police station, meet with Bud Ellison posing as FBI agents. Bud insists that there are some unexplained accidents, and Len demands to see the case files. The sheriff quickly cars, and once he leaves, Len insists that Rip isn't his partner, and he points out that Mick was the only person he trusted, and they all know how that turned out, that, he's not going to ally with Rip, it's just not the right thing to do. And we don't really know what happened with Mick, if, Len killed him, or what really happened there, but we do know that whatever happened, it didn't end well, and obviously, things aren't good between Len and Mick right now, because obviously Mick has gone dark, and Len's really upset about that, and I think they handled that really well, definitely. I like the entire episode, though, didn't focus on that. Now, the one thing I will definitely give this episode that I'm very surprised about is the character of Jax. You guys know, I haven't loved this character, I really haven't. I found him to be very one-dimensional, I found the actor to be very one-dimensional. Something about this episode, this without a doubt was Jax's best episode. I mean, the actor just seemed so into this episode. He seemed like he was having fun, he seemed like he was genuinely into the storyline, and it didn't seem wooden. Like, it really seems like he's starting to really understand this character, and I love what they did with Jax here. Like I said, by far, for me, Jax was the star of this episode, because I've loved Jax in other I've liked Jax in other episodes. This is the first episode where I loved his character. I thought they did a great job with him here. Stein, Jax, and Sarah go to a local diner. Stein revels in the town's idyllic feel, and Jax and Sarah point out that it was only perfect for straight white men and no one else, because, Sarah's bisexual and Jax is black, and they notice Betty sitting by herself. According to a newspaper article, she was with the 3 missing teenagers before they disappeared, and Sarah and Stein head back to the asylum, and Jax approaches Betty, and I love the scene where Stein, told him what to do, and Jax can you just tell me to go up to her? I thought that was really funny to see. Really shows how different those two are, and obviously, everyone's staring at Jax and Betty, because again, that wasn't accepted back then. It wasn't, normal for someone that was black and someone that was white to be in love or even talk to each other. That's just not how it was back then. Things were very different, and I think they really did that very well here. Again, they could have done it very cheesy, but it was very realistic. That's how the time period was, and they did it very well. So Jax offers Betty a french fry and a shake, and two jocks come over, tell Betty that she doesn't hang out with the loser. Jax invites him to fight. The counterman shakes his head, and the jocks warn Jax that it isn't over before leaving. I love that Jax called him Biff. I thought that was just great. I love the line where he's like, "What do you want, Biff?" I mean, it's clear that this was very much like Back to the Future. They were very clearly trying to do something like Back to the Future, and I think they really succeeded. I very much got that vibe from this episode. So basically, Betty asks Jax if he wants to hang out the next night, and he agrees, and you can see these two are connecting. Even though they shouldn't connect, they are connecting, and even though this is wrong, that's what's going on. I like seeing that. So Kendra and Ray finish moving in, and Ray invites Kendra to dance, and as they do, Ray reminds her that they're pretending to be married and that they're not actually married, and suggests that they have fun while they can. You can tell that they're really enjoying this, definitely. So at the asylum, Sarah complains that they're wasting time. Martin and Stein asks Sarah to get him the files on violent patients, and she reluctantly agrees, even though she doesn't really want to do that. She just feels that this is just going to waste time, and we see Hannah starts playing with another nurse, Lindsay Carlisle, and Sarah rams a drawer into his back. He goes to clean up, and Lindsay thanks Sarah for his help. She says that most of the doctors are looking for a good time, and the nurses agree because they want to get married, and Sarah asks for a tour, and Lindsay agrees. And as they go, and you can tell right away that Sarah and Lindsay are very close. I really like this character of Lindsay, because again, Lindsay is a character that isn't really accepted, and we'll get into why. So Sarah gives Stein the files, tells him to get her coffee. Lindsay shows Sarah around, points out Hall H, the restricted ward for Knox's violent patients. There's a photo of Knox on the wall, and Sarah realizes that Knox is Vandal Savage. This is not just, some anonymous killer. This is, in fact, Savage, and there's a definite reason why he's doing this. So Kendra answered the door, finds a couple there to welcome them. It's Gail Knox and her husband Curtis Knox, and Kendra realizes that it's Savage. But the big thing about this is that, a man has a flat and is changing when his hat blows off. A feather falls out of the sky, and a feather creature flies down, tears the man to shreds, and then flies off, which, that was crazy the way that happened. I don't know how Savage is doing this exactly, but that was insane. Savage wonders if he and Kendra have met before. She hastily says that she hasn't, and Ray comes over and also stares at Savage, and Savage invites him to their party. Once the couple leaves, Ray and Kendra return to Waverider, and they realize that Savage thinks she doesn't remember him. So Savage is going to pretend that, he means no harm, and it's clear that they're going to keep up this lie, and he won't try to kill her to take her powers, because what is the one thing that Savage has wanted? He's wanted Kendra, and this is the first time where he acts completely civil, and it's very interesting to see. So Rip and Len have reviewed the files but found nothing. Jax points out that Len made Mick disappear, and then asks if they're all going to forget their teammate, and Sarah says they need to stay focused on the mission, and Rip tells Kendra and Ray to attend the party and keep an eye on Savage. Meanwhile, Stein and Sarah will find out what Savage is up to in Hall H, because obviously there's something that he's up to and they don't trust him. So Later at the hospital, Sarah's going through Savage's files when Lindsay comes in. She assumes that Sarah's looking for alcohol and offers to show her where Hannah keeps his, and that's not obviously what she's looking for, but I did like this, what happened between Sarah and Lindsay. Kendra and Ray arrive at the party. One of the guests assumes that Kendra is a maid because that's generally what someone of, her skin color would be doing back then, and the couple quickly corrects her, and Savage comes over to greet them. Once he goes to make drinks, Kendra tells Ray to check the back rooms. Ray worries about leaving Kendra with Savage, and she figures that she'll be fine. He doesn't recognize her. He's not after her, so, she doesn't think that she recognizes him, so everything should be fine. They should have nothing to worry about, really, and that, there's nothing bad that should happen. But obviously, Ray's not so sure about this. So Sarah and Lindsay drink, and Sarah talks about some of her traveling experiences. She finally asks Lindsay if she has a girlfriend, and Lindsay refuses to discuss this. She doesn't want to talk about it because that's not something they talked about back then. This very much reminded me of Carol. You know that movie Carol that just came out with Cate Blanchett and Rooney Mara, that movie about the two lesbians that really couldn't be in love. They had to hide their relationship and everything. Well, it's very much like it was then. Back in that movie, though, it takes place in the 50s, and this also takes place in the 50s. Lesbians were not accepted. Gays were not accepted. Lesbians were not accepted. And they showed that very well here. Sarah assures her that she's good at keeping secrets. And Lindsay admits that she did kiss a girl once. She warns that lesbian is not a good word around Harmony Falls. And Sarah points out that she's not from around there. And that's not, obviously she's not. She's not used to, not, getting to be a lesbian. She's not used to having to hide that. Stein comes in to get Sarah, and once they're alone, she says that she was liberating Lindsay. He points out that Lindsay will be stuck in the 1950s after they leave, but Sarah isn't convinced, and an alarm then goes off, and guards run by, and Sarah wants to get her out of there. Sarah wants to get her out of the 50s because she wants Lindsay to understand that she can be accepted, and I like the way they handle this. This isn't just some random love that Sarah's going through. This is really Sarah's chance to open up Lindsay to other, to progression, and that really is what she wants to do. She wants Lindsay to see that the world does progress and the world does get better, but unfortunately she can't do that. So Savage approaches Kendra, says that Ray doesn't seem like her type. He says that he feels like he knows Kendra and asks her if she believes in past lives, and Ray checks the back rooms, finds a locked metal door, and Savage asks if Kendra believes in fate, and as they discuss free will, the phone rings. Savage answers. He says he's on his way and tells Kendra that one of his patients needs attention. He goes to the hospital, talks to the patient, Tommy, and Savage points out that he's let Tommy and his cohorts the occasional freedom to run free and feed their thirst, and Tommy and the other two teenagers all turn into bird creatures, snarl at him as Savage kneels to check the orderly that they killed, and I mean, this is insane. This is literally a horror movie, and I couldn't get over what was going on here. I mean, the way that he was using them, turning them into birds, I mean, he clearly has thought of this very, very well, and you can tell that I'm pretty sure that Savage knows them and isn't really admitting to that. So it's very interesting to see what's going on there. Ray and Kendra then return to Waverider, tell Rip that they plan to break into Savage's locked basement room, and Jax comes up dressed for his date, explains what he's doing. Rip warns that Betty is a white girl in an unenlightened town, and Jax agrees to be careful because, again, that's just not something that was accepted back then, and that he needs to be careful with what he does with her. But it's clear that Jax wants to try. I mean, Betty likes him. Betty accepts that he's black. She doesn't really care, and he wants to be with her, and I like seeing Jax wanting to do that. I can understand that. Jax didn't come across as stubborn here. Jax came across as really wanting to make a difference, and Sarah the same thing. She doesn't care that it's not accepted. If she wants to be with Lindsay, she's going to be with her. She's going to do whatever she can to do that, because they don't know of another world, and I like that the way they handle it. I really did enjoy the way that was done, I have to say. So back at home, Kendra watches Savage's home through binoculars. Adam breaks in using his shrinking powers and checks the room. He finds a wooden case and examines it just as Savage pulls up outside. Kendra spots him and warns Adam, who has found the aim and dagger in the case, and Savage enters the room just as Adam shrinks out of sight. And at the asylum, Sarah talks with Lindsay about being alone in an insane asylum. Lindsay misses she gets lonely and says that Hall H does scare her, and she tries not to think about what is going on there, and Sarah asks what she does think about, and Lindsay kisses Sarah, who after a moment backs away, says that she has to get to work, and Lindsay clearly isn't afraid of hiding it anymore. Sarah showed her that she doesn't have to be afraid, and I like the way this was done. I like that these two are getting closer. Very interesting to see. So Jax and Betty park on a road. She abruptly kisses him. She backs away, and Jax says that he thought girls from 1958 moved a bit slower. Betty picks up on his comment, and Jax suggests they get to know each other a little better. He asks about what the boys said about Tommy going AWOL, and Betty explains about how Tommy's car crashed, and the two jocks arrive and drag Jax and Betty out, and one of them starts beating Jax. He fights back. The transformed Tommy sweeps down, attacks the boy holding Betty. Jax tries to start the car. Tommy calls Betty's name. He flies up to the roof, rips through the top, scratching Betty's throat. Jax breaks, knocking Tommy off, and then drives for Waverider, and really crazy stuff overall. A police car pulls up behind them. Jax reluctantly pulls over. He gets out, tells Bud that he needs to get Betty to a hospital. Bud sees the bleeding Betty, orders Jax to put his hands on the car, knocks him out when he refused. The sheriff then rags Jax back to his car. And again, I didn't care that we're never going to see probably Betty and Lindsay again. These are just two characters that I thought they handled really, really well, and it seemed like they are going to see them again. They really treat them like they were just as important because they were very essential to this story, and I think they handled that really well. So, really interesting stuff there. A few minutes later, Len and Rip have Gideon trace Jax's biosignal and find Betty. They take her to Waverider and have Gideon work on her. Stein Rising confirms that the wounds aren't consistent with a knife, and that it has nothing to do with that. We know that it's birds that are doing it. And Gideon suggests that talons were used, and Betty mutters that Tommy attacked her and it's a bird monster. And the AI checks Betty's blood and finds traces of silicate minerals, and Rip asks Betty if Tommy came into contact with a meteor. She tells Rip about the car crash, and they realize that the meteor was made of NTH metal. It mutated Tommy and his friends, and that's how this whole thing worked out. And they did a good job of having that make sense, because I myself was thinking, how does this really make sense? How did they just randomly turn into these birds? That doesn't really make sense to me. But they did a good job with having it make sense, and I think they did a really good job with that. I definitely enjoyed that. So when Ray and Kendra arrive at the time ship, Stein explains the same type of meteorite that gave her, Carter, and Savage their powers 4,000 years ago also mutated Tommy, and it's clear this is something that Savage planned out, and Len wonders if there's a way to reverse the process, and Stein admits that he might be able to create such a process, that there might be a way to do that, and Rip sends him to work out the cure, and Ray shows them the aim and dagger. The Time Master says they have to find both Jax and attack Savage, and Kendra says that Savage has always wanted her, so she can use that to get close to him, and Ray worries that Savage will kill her, and Kendra says that she can take care of herself, and he shouldn't worry about her, and I like that Kendra wanted to do this on her own. Like, this wasn't her saying, oh, I'm hung up over this guy. This was her saying, no, you know, if Savage is going after me, I'm gonna do what I can do to try to protect myself, and if it means for me getting killed to protect my friends, that's what I'm gonna do. So, Sarah checks on Stein, who's analyzing Betty for a trace of the NTH metal to create a cure, and he figures that they will then go back to the asylum, that when they go back to the asylum, Sarah will see Lindsay again, and Stein warns that rushing Lindsay into the free-whelming sexual mores at that time is a bad idea, and that Sarah should just leave it alone. But Sarah admits that she freaked out. She hasn't had much in the way of feelings since she came back to life, and was terrified when Lindsay kissed her, which I thought was very interesting. And it's true, I mean, ever since Sarah's come back, she's kind of been devoid of feelings. She hasn't really known what she is. She's really been trying to figure out what's going on with her. You know, is she a lesbian? Is she gay? You know, is she straight? What is she really? And this was really the first time where she had a romantic encounter and she really felt something, which is very interesting. I like the way they're handling that. And it really does show that Sarah's starting to realize more of who she is, and I like seeing that. So, Bud wakes Jax up. Jack realizes that he's strapped to a chair at the asylum. Savage comes in, prepares a syringe. He extracts some of the NTH metal from the meteorite, injects it into Jax. He writes in agony as his eyes turn black, and later Savage chains Jax up after Jax mutates into a bird creature. And as the Immortal admires his work, Bud comes in, says that there's a visitor. Kendra's waiting in his office and has the aim and dagger hidden in her purse. She sets her purse aside, offers to take her coat, and Ray's in the lobby posing as a patient, listening to Kendra over her radio. Sarah's there and advises him to trust Kendra a little bit more, and has Rip disguised as an orderly, takes Ray to his room. Once they go, Sarah looks over at Lindsay, hastily looks away when Lindsay looks back at her, because obviously, she's very scared of Lindsay right now. You know, she doesn't really know how to feel, and she knows that she can't really be with Lindsay because Lindsay's gonna get attached, and then when Sarah's gonna have to go, Lindsay's not gonna know what to do. So, Len and Stein break into the asylum basement, and Stein warns that he's lost his psychic connection with Jax because Jax is now mutated. He's no longer Firestorm, which is very interesting to see here. So, Kendra talks about psychoanalysis, and Savage offers to interpret her dreams. She says that she's dreamed the two of them together, and she tries to remove the dagger from her purse, and Savage kisses her, then puts the dagger to her throat. He's well aware of what she was up to. You know, he knew that she was going to try to kill him, and he's going to try to do that. So, Rip and Ray make their way through the halls. Bud finds him, he draws his gun, prepares to take them in. Savage doesn't believe Kendra when she says she came alone, releases test subjects, and I have to say, I think this was Savage's most menacing episode yet. I've heard a lot of people say, oh, Savage isn't menacing. This episode shows really, I think, how powerful Savage really can be. So Tommy and his friends attack Len and Stein. Len freezes them. Kendra hears the bird creature screeching, and Savage explains he set out to build an army as powerful as Kendra. She breaks free, attached Savage, and the transformed Jax approaches Stein, who tries to get through to him. He advances on the professor, and Len aims his gun, tells Jax not to make him shoot, and Jax slashes Len. He shoots a pipe and escapes in the confusion, and obviously, he's not himself because he's mutated. So one of the bird creatures attacks Bud in the hallway. Rip stuns it with his gun. He sends Ray to find Kendra while he deals with the creatures, and the hospital staff panics as one of the creatures goes on a rampage. It advances on Lindsay. Sarah beats it unconscious. She tells Lindsay that she'll explain later and runs off, and I like the way that was done, just the way that Sarah stepped in for her and saved her. Even though she knows that it's not right to do, she cares about Lindsay, and she's going to try to save her, and she doesn't want Lindsay to get hurt, and I thought that was definitely very well done. So, Savage knocks down Kendra, prepares to go at her. Ray runs in, shoots Savage, knocking him out the back window, and Jax then finds Len and Stein again. Sarah knocks him out and says it's time to go. Len and Stein take Jax to Waverider, and Stein injects Jax with the antidote that Gideon created, and when Stein thanks Len, Len dismisses his appreciation. The professor says what he did was heroic no matter what Len claims, and it's clear that Len is not feeling like a hero because of what happened with Mick. I think like he's really regretting what he did, and even though he had to do it, he's regretting it because he knew that's not what Mick wanted and that he could have saved him, and he feels like he just could have done more. And I really do feel bad for Len in this situation. I would say very sad to see. Definitely, I definitely don't feel bad for him here, and definitely, like I said, very sad. So Jax reverts to normal as they watch. Sarah then finds Lindsay, who confirms that Stein's antidote is working on Tommy and the others. The nurse admits they may never get back to normal, and Sarah kisses her. Lindsay realizes that Sarah has to go. Sarah says that one day she might be back, and I like that she very quickly explained to Lindsay what's going on. It's a very complicated situation, obviously, because of the fact that Lindsay, you know, she might never see her again, but she does clearly care about her, and I like seeing that. So Jax brings Betty a new car. She wishes that he didn't have to go. He says that neither of one of them belongs in Harmony Falls, asks her to promise that she'll leave, and that this is just not the place for her. Obviously, there are people that are beating down on her, and this is just not the place for her to go. So Tommy arrives, Betty hugs him, and Jax says that the world is changing fast and leaves, and that's exactly what's going to happen, is that the world's going to change fast, and they might have made it change faster. They've made people more aware of who they are, and I like the way that was done. A big part of Legends of Tomorrow is self-identity, and I think they handle that really well here. So Kendra approaches Ray as he packs up. She apologizes for thinking she could kill Savage by herself. Ray says that he forgot why they were there, and he assures Kendra that she'll kill Savage one day, and figures that she needs a partner rather than a husband. And Kendra agrees and then kisses him. I like the way this was done. They're realizing that they really need to work together, and they can't be married because she needs to kill Savage. As long as Savage is alive, these two can be together, but they need to be strictly partners. That's what they need to be, and I like the way they handled that. Definitely really good stuff, and I like the way they're setting up Kendra and Ray. I honestly really do like this relationship, and I think it showed how great these two really can be when you put them to good use. I mean, what they did with Kendra here really put her character to good use. I mean, she's really trying to discover herself, and I really think she has, and they're doing a very good job with that. So Jax goes to Waverider's bridge, finds Len alone. He apologizes to Len, saying that he knows that he's no monster, and Len doesn't want to hear it. He knows what he is, and he doesn't think anything more, and Jax says he understands that Len was protecting them against Mick, and that makes him part of the team, and that he shouldn't be upset over what he did, because he had all the reasons to neutralize Mick. And then we see Stein and Rip arrive. Len points out that they're still waiting for Sarah, Ray, and Kendra. Kronos then opens fire on the ship, breaches the hull. He comes in and opens fire, and Rip and Len return fire. Jax wants to merge with Stein, but Stein warns the transformation could destroy the ship. Rip orders a retreat to jump to the jump ship, and Ray, Sarah, and Kendra approach Waverider and watch it as it lifts off without them. They're stuck in the 1950s, and that's how the episode ends. And what a great way to go on a hiatus, because now the show is going on hiatus for, I think, 3 weeks, something like that. And it's a perfect time for them to go on hiatus because that was the perfect way to go on a cliffhanger. I mean, this really was a great episode. I really love the way this episode was done. Like I said, very entertaining, very funny, but also just very insightful. They really did the time period of the 50s very well. I really appreciate that. I thought that was very well done. But what I really love is now that Sarah's still in 1950s, is she going to try to maybe try something out with Lindsay, because now they're trapped here. The Waverider's gone without them, and obviously they're going to get back, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are a few episodes that these three spend in the 1950s, and Sarah, might try to be with Lindsay and might try to approach her, because it's clear that she really does care about her, and she really does want to be with her, and I think Sarah's really starting to understand who she is, and I like the way they handle that, so I wouldn't be surprised if Sarah decides to stay in the 50s with Lindsay, and Ray and Kendra clearly do want to get back, obviously, but Chrono's obviously stopped them. We'll have to see what happens there. It's going to be very interesting to see what's going to happen with that, and I like the way they're handling that. Obviously, the ship is in danger now. Are they going to be able to get back to Ray, Sara, and Kendra? How long is it going to take them to get back there? And where the hell are they going? I mean, we don't really know where they're headed next because of the fact that now there's this attack. They could literally go anywhere, and this could end up really bad for them. So we'll have to see what happens with that. Len is obviously very guilty. He feels like he's this monster, and he really feels bad about killing Mick. And as much as anyone tells him this isn't your fault, Len knows that he really should not have probably neutralized Mick, that he probably should have done something different. He shouldn't have just offed Mick like he did. Now, again, we don't know if he killed Mick or if Mick is dead or whatever. I don't think this is the end we've seen of Mick. I really don't. I think we are going to see Mick again. We'll have to see what happens with that, but right now, at least, it's sad to see Len very sad because, he's usually the guy that's been in a crime fight and he was starting to feel like a hero, and now he's feeling like he's this monster that can't be controlled and doesn't want anyone to make him think he's any more than that because that's what he thinks he is, and it's really sad to see. I honestly really do feel bad for Len for what he did because I really do understand what he's going through, honestly. I think it's very sad to see, I have to say. Jax and Betty. Obviously, we're never going to see Betty again, but there is a possibility. I mean, the fact that they have to go back to the 1950s shows that these characters, we might get to see them again, which is awesome. I like the character of Betty. I like the character of Lindsay. These are characters that could have just been one-offs, but they really end up being much more impactful than I think they were set out to be. I really like Betty because she accepts Jax for who he is and doesn't think any less of him. And then Lindsay is someone that's trying to discover herself and doesn't want to admit who she really is, and not only is Sarah getting to learn who she is, she's learning more about herself, and I really think they handled all that really well, and I really enjoyed that. I like where we're headed with Kendra and Ray as well. I like that Kendra wants to voluntarily be the one to kill Savage. I mean, she definitely would be the one to do it. If someone has to kill Savage, it's gonna be her. I'm pretty sure Savage is, at least gonna last this season. He's not gonna be killed anytime soon, but I think if someone is gonna kill Savage, it's gonna be Kendra. We'll have to see what happens, so it's gonna be very interesting to see. Like I said, I definitely think she's going to be the one to do it, and I like the way they handle that. And I also like that everyone really did something on this mission. Everyone did something substantial, really, except for, of course, Len, because he's feeling really bad for what happened with Mick. I can totally understand that. But besides that, everyone else really had something substantial to do, and there wasn't really anyone just on the Waverider preparing the ship, trying to fix the ship. There wasn't anyone like that. I was happy about that. I thought they handled all that really well. And like I said, I like this episode really got into the ideas of what some of the subjects were in the 1950s. These were problems that I'm glad the show addressed. I didn't think the show would really get into this as deep as it did, but it really did. I think they handled it all really, really well, I have to say. But overall, guys, how much you guys saw this episode. Great episode. Absolutely loved it. One of my favorites by far. Like I said, the most entertaining episode. Definitely absolutely loved it. I can't wait to see what happens when the show returns. Let me know what you guys saw this episode. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for Colony, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.